Hello, this is John Leonard Harris, President and Lead Trainer for Encouragement Consulting Services, sharing with you this program today called Diversity Toward a Better Understanding. You know, diversity is on the mind of so many people across this world and in so many different ways. And why are we talking about so much? Whether it's in the business world, the entertainment arena, sports, education, we seem to be talking about diversity. And oftentimes diversity is added to inclusion. So we have diversity and inclusion and so forth. And so the conversations abound, the answers, people think they have the answers. The question is, do they really? Should we be talking about this the way we are, to the magnitude that we are? And I say yes, yes. You know, Dr. King, in the midst of the civil rights movement, challenged the people with three different perspectives of the issues that were at hand. And I want to share those with you right now. The first of those perspectives was that of the eternal optimist. Excuse me. The eternal optimist's position was that everything was fine and there was nothing really that needed to be done. And so why try? Why do anything? Everything's great. Everything's fine. He said there's a second position, that of the eternal pessimist, where that person says, well, we've been doing all this conversation and talking and whatever, and it doesn't amount to anything. So what's the use? But Dr. King said he's going to take the position of the realist. And the realist suggests that we've come a long way and we have yet a long way to go. And such is the case with this conversation about diversity that we're going to engage in today. And so where do we start? Well, I have a few objectives that I want to make sure that we accomplish today. And let's take a look at those right now. Where do we want to start? Well, the first thing I want to do for you is expand the definition of diversity. Oftentimes it's in the area of race and maybe sex or gender, but I want to expand that definition for you today. And I think you'll appreciate that. Also, we want to talk about, I want to give you the definition of what it means to seek this better understanding. And so I want you to be clear about what I mean relative to that. Also, I want to share with you what I call some diversity considerations for organizations and for individuals. This is a organizational company thing, of course, but it's also a very personal and professional thing. So I want to talk to you about what I call diversity considerations. Also, I want to remind us of the promises that we make in our profession every day. The promises, the internal promises, of course, to you that are made, but of course, the external promises to your clientele. Also, I want to explore where we start in this process of seeking this better understanding and what's critical in terms of helping us along the way. So I want to make sure that you know that as we journey along. I want you to be careful to watch what I call your spam, and I'll share that acronym and that acrostic with you. Each letter has a specific meaning. I want to share that with you. And lastly, as we have time, I want to talk to you about developing what I call a personal action plan. So you have information for application. All right. So where do we get started? We start with this quote. This is from Aristotle, who says, "We like those who resemble us and are engaged in the same pursuits." We like those who resemble us and are engaged in the same pursuits. Well, what Aristotle is saying is what I believe is the case for many people. Take a look at this guy here. What he's saying is that we're creatures of comfort. We like that which is most familiar to us, rather. Is that a wrong thing? We're creatures of comfort. The challenge, though, when we're talking about diversity, is that sometimes, if not most times, we need to come out of that comfort zone. We need to come out of that comfort zone, challenge ourselves. And so that quote from Aristotle is antithetical to the quote that says variety is the spice of life. Well, this guy here is just chilling right here. So he says, I like what I like because that's what I like. And so so many people are right there, and for good reason. They're so used to doing things the way they're used to doing them. And so it's a challenge to come out of that and begin to stretch yourself to change and so forth. And so with that said, let me take you right to my definition. What are we talking about when we're talking about developing this better understanding? Well, I say it this way. It's about a willingness to be open to the exposure and interactions with people of different cultures in order to help me, again, that's personal, and then us, that's the collective, learn together, becoming more knowledgeable about the ways we experience life. That's right. A willingness to be open to the exposure and interactions with people of different cultures in order to help me. And again, that's where we have to start. And then us to learn together, becoming more knowledgeable about the ways we experience life. All right. And so we're mindful now of three questions. First question is, am I willing? Am I willing? Am I willing to be exposed and interact in a way that I'm not as comfortable most of the time doing? Am I open? Am I open? Again, that doesn't mean that you jump on board everything that everybody believes, that you change all your value systems and everything. But the question is, are you open to hearing different perspectives, at least engaging the process? And then are you, as you are today, are you ready to learn? Are you ready to learn? The adage is that we can learn something new every day. Well, that's true. You can learn something new every single day. The question is, are you ready to learn? And so I trust that even on today, that as we go through this information, that you're willing, that you're open, and that you become more ready to learn every single day. All right? So where do we go from here? Well, let me just give you my definition of diversity. What am I talking about? Well, diversity is the variety of similarities and differences, some visible and some invisible, between people in an organization. It could be a neighborhood. It could be any kind of institution or setting that encompasses race, sex and gender, ethnic group, age, ability, personality, learning styles, tenure or length of time in a place, organizational function or roles, if you will, education, background, generations, and so much more. That's the expansive definition of diversity. Again, some of the similarities, which are visible. Okay, obviously the color of my skin is a visible aspect of my difference, but there are other things about me that you cannot see. That's a part of my diversity makeup. Okay, component parts. Let me give you a quick example. There are things that we know how to do that people don't know we know how to do. For instance, once upon a time I was in my office as an administrator. I learned in the private high school that I attended to learn how to do calligraphy. And so I had about 7 certificates, and I did some calligraphy, and I showed them to a few people around the office. Well, when I got back from my program, I had a stack of 40 certificates on my desk from the vice chancellor. The secretary told him that I did calligraphy, and he said, "Hey, that's great. Why don't we have John do calligraphy for us on our certificates for our program?" I'm like, "Oh my goodness, are you serious?" Well, I showed them something, an invisible part of my diversity characteristic, and then of course they wanted to take advantage of that, and my hand would prove that that was definitely something that they did take advantage of. So again, some of the things that we can see, and then of course some of the things that we cannot see as a part of our diversity makeup. And it's not always, again, race and sex as a part, and ethnicity as a part of our diversity conversations. Let me tell you what I mean. As we think about diversity in this regard, we think about what I call diversity considerations. Those things that most often, sometimes, that we don't consider, we don't think about, but we should, as we are journeying and bandying about how to make our organizations better, how to accomplish what it is we are setting out to accomplish. What are the diversity considerations that I'm going to share with you today? Well, here they are. Well, the first one is diversity considerations in hiring. That's right. How mindful are we of the need in hiring to bring in different kinds of people into the organization to make us better, to add different perspectives and opinions and so forth. Diversity considerations in that regard. Marketing. How about our brochures? How about the things we send out to people? Are they indicative of the fact that we have a diverse community that they can be a part of, or that will serve them? Are we mindful of those considerations in marketing? Strategies that we talk about, again, different opinions and perspectives that come to the table that help make us better at what we're doing. Policies, are we thinking about it, how they affect people across the board, not just my group, but the whole group? And am I mindful of that? Benefits, leadership, course, diversity in leadership is paramount. It's essential that we begin to think about how to diversify the leadership in such a way that brings into view things that I might not be able to see myself because of my narrow perspective on things. How about decision making? And of course, service. So a lot of these things are what I call diversity considerations. Let me give you an example of a very interesting diversity consideration some years ago. Actually, not this one is even more recent. When you scratch yourself, and you have, I'm sure, if you have children like I have, they scratch themselves, and of course, what do? You put a little antiseptic on there, then you put a Band-Aid on it. Well, historically, Band-Aids have been a flesh tone color that's not the same as my own. So Band-Aid's supposed to cover up your wound. When in actuality, for me, it does just the opposite. It's very obvious. People ask me all the time, "Hey, John, what happened? What did you do to yourself?" Well, the Band-Aid was a flesh tone that was not mine. Well, in June of 2020, Band-Aid made a decision. Band-Aid made a decision to diversify, to make a diversity consideration. Look at what they did. Band-Aid made an acknowledgement that there's more than one skin tone. Boy, isn't that rocket science? The world is not one color. So Band-Aid decided. Now you could say, well, it was for economic reasons. It was whatever reason it was for. Band-Aid acknowledged and then decided. See, that's one of the things about diversity consideration. It's one thing to acknowledge it, but it's another thing to act on it. And so they decided the world is not one color, and we're going to make Band-Aids in multiple skin tones. And that's exactly what they did, multiple skin tones. And so Band-Aids now are available, and they're also available in clear. So you can not see that I have a Band-Aid on at all. Those are diversity considerations. And so as you think about those in your world, what diversity considerations do you need to think about in hiring, in marketing, in leadership, in decision making, and in service, in all of those different ways? What diversity considerations do you need to be thinking about? All right. Now, diversity considerations have another dimension. Diversity considerations are for the employees and the clients as well. And so what are those diversity considerations? Well, of course, those are the more familiar considerations. Race, color of our skin, if you will, which is a social construct. Let's be clear. It's something that delineates one group from another, one person from another, because of an obvious external, visible characteristic. All right, sex or gender, age, ability, or a certain kind of impairment that is something we need to think about. That's why we have curb cuts. That's why we have certain rails. That's why we have what are considered handicapped parking spots. And so someone thought about that at a company that made a decision relative to some of its employees, some of its women who were pregnant, to make a decision to offer them the opportunity, not make them and not tell them that they had to, but to offer them the opportunity because of the weather to park closer to the building, so that they wouldn't be walking through the snow and the ice and possibly slip, which would be detrimental. And so they thought, maybe we should offer this to some of the women who are pregnant in our company and see if they would be open to it, see if they want to take advantage of it. It's a diversity consideration. They got to choose whether they wanted to do it or not, but it was something that they thought would be helpful, okay? Education level is something that we think about as a diversity consideration. Learning style, which I'll reference here in a moment. Interests, and social status. We can talk about economics with regard to that. So what's a diversity consideration relative to employees and clients that we need to think about? Well, the legal profession is a profession that is based on facts, on evidence, it's very detailed oriented, and not everyone likes people who can't give them the facts right away. They get frustrated by that. And so you want the facts, you want the details, you want them in a prompt manner. Well, I want to let you know that everybody is not like that. Everybody's not like that. And so as you think about yourself, you say, well, listen, just give it to me straight. Well, let's talk about diversity as relates to learning styles. Learning styles. Well, let's say it this way. There are two ways that people perceive the world. Some people are concrete and some people are abstract. That's right. What does that mean? That means that the concrete people, and I imagine there are many watching this call, they want the facts, they want the details. So you go out and you see an accident and you see 4 or 5 people, and someone walks up to them and says, tell me what happened. Well, how many stories are you going to get? How many are you going to get? Somebody might say, hey, listen, this is what happened. They came through the intersection. This car wasn't watching. This person was on a cell phone. It could be any number of things. They give you all the specific details. Boom, you're satisfied. I'm sure the officers are pretty pleased with that. And again, if that person needs legal representation, and then you say, well, so what happened? They give you all the facts once again, just like they did in the police report. But other people perceive the world in a more abstract way. And so they're going to give you the details as well, but they're going to give them to you in a way that tells a story. They're going to meander first. They're going to go all over the place. And then they're going to finally get to the place where they tell you what you want to know. It can be very frustrating if you're not willing and if you're not open, okay? And so I want to make sure you understand this. You got to be willing and open to learn. And if you're not, if you just stay with the way you want things, then you're going to be frustrated. But see, this is the reality of diversity as it relates to learning styles. Learning styles. Some people perceive the world in a concrete way. Some people perceive the way in an abstract way. You can actually say it in another way as well. Some people are more task-oriented, and some people are more relationship-oriented. It's all about getting the job done, whereas some people, it's more about the interaction and the fellowship. That's why when I suggest to people about their meetings, I say, listen, before you have your meetings and get to all the details, why don't you ask people how things are going? Show a little concern for not just the thing we're trying to do, but the people with whom we're doing it. All right. So that's just one dimension of learning styles as it relates to diversity, and something I want you to consider. But I want to give you the second dimension, because there's a way that people order the world as well. Talking about diversity, learning styles. Some people order the world sequentially, and some people order the world randomly. What does that mean? What does it look like? Well, in terms of sequential, that's a place for everything and everything in its place. You take a look there at the garage, look at it, look at how everything is set up. Got things on the rack, you got the shelves, you got everything right where the owner wants everything to be. So you're looking for a shovel, you're looking for a rake, guess what? It's right there. Now, by contrast, you have someone who orders the world, and I say orders the world in a more random way. Well, take a look. In a more random way. Now, you could say, well, boy, John, what is that? Well, this is how they ordered their world. A place for everything. And so, let's say you need a shovel. Well, the person whose garage this is, they know where the shovel is. It might take them a little bit longer to get it, but they probably know where it is. And so there are people in your world. You go into their offices and you see some like the picture at the top, and of course you're going to see some like the picture at the bottom. These are diversity considerations. Are both garages ordered? Yes, they are. They're just ordered differently. Is one wrong and one right? Well, I'm sure as I think about if I was in person with you, you probably would say, I probably could hear a nice groan in the affirmative. But again, both are ordered differently. One sequential and one randomly. All right. So, and I know that can be frustrating, but again, that lets us know that as we consider diversity, as we consider the way people are, then we have to stretch ourselves to meet them where they are. That's a diversity consideration. As we push forward here, I want to just make a quick reference to this whole idea of promises. So every organization has a mission, has a vision, and has values. That's right. Every organization. Saying what you want to do, where you're going with the thing, and then what guiding principles guide the organization. Every organization has this. They also make promises. That's right. Every organization makes promises. Some of those promises are what we call the internal promises, and those promises are the promises to the people inside the organization. That's right. So you expect a paycheck, you expect a respectful work environment, you expect the benefits. There's a lot of expectations that you have from your employer. Those are promises. That's right. And you expect those things every day, every week, every month, every year, all the time. The question then becomes, what about the promises you make? That's right. What about the promises that are the external promises? These are the promises to the people outside of the organization. That's right. The people outside the organization. What should they expect from you? What are the promises you are supposed to keep to them? Well, again, of course, you want the respectful workplace. You want prompt response. You want professionalism. Again, that's not something we talk a whole lot about, professionalism, but it is a watchword. It's a thing that definitely is necessary to accomplish your goals and your objectives and so forth relative to the organization. So I want to just remind you that every single day there are expectations. That's right. There are expectations that you have of your employer, but there are expectations that people have, the client and other employees rather, inside the organization, they have from you. And so the challenge is to make sure that you are ready and willing and able to keep your promise. Have you ever had a promise broken to you? Has anybody ever made a promise and broken it? How did you feel about that? Here's another question. Have you ever made a promise that you've broken? And how do you think the people to whom you made the promise felt about that? And so I'm challenging you to be a promise keeper. Don't make promises that you can't keep. And if you make the promise, keep the promise. All right? Keep the promise. And so the question here is, how do diversity considerations impact how we keep our promises? How about the diversity considerations to our organizations? And of course, the diversity considerations to our employees and clients. How do they impact how we keep our promises? So that's something I want you to consider, something that I want you to think long and hard about, excuse me, when you talk about diversity. All right. As we push forward here, I want to share with you a quick story. I am that abstract person. I'm not Mr. Concrete, I'm Mr. Abstract. And so with that said, in this next segment, I want to share with you a quick story and share with you 4 words that help us in this journey of seeking this better understanding. So where do we go with this? Well, yours truly was in Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. And so as we start this journey, again, you see the investigation there. You see where does it start? How does it start? Well, we start in Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. We start in Scotts Bluff, Nebraska, 1992. I'm out there doing some cultural programs, and I'm just finishing my first program, ready to get something to eat before the second one. I'm perusing the food festival, if you will, that they had in the gymnasium at Western Nebraska Community College, Scotts Bluff, Nebraska. I'd never been out there. Anybody been to Scotts Bluff? Willing to admit it? Okay, there you go. And so we're out in Scotts Bluff, and I'm walking through the gymnasium looking for something to eat. Someone told me about some Indian tacos out there. I said, maybe I'll go ahead and check these out. So I'm walking, and as I'm walking, I'm hearing the pitter patter of footsteps following me. That's right, following me everywhere I go. And so this goes on for a few minutes, and I get curious. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Who's following me and why? And so next thing I know, I finally decide, you know what, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to turn around, and I'm going to find out who it is. So I turn around, and there are 3 little boys, 2 little Caucasian boys, 1 little Mexican boy. They're following me. And so I finally decide that I'm going to confront them and ask them why they're following me. And this brings us to the first word. The first word you see on the screen there is culture. Culture's everything that makes us who we are. It's the information that we have. Secondly, perspective gives us a perspective, a view on things, value, and then relationship. So these boys, Scotts Bluff, Nebraska, I've accosted them after they followed me. They followed me first. And so finally, I'm trying to find out what happened. What's happening? So I turn around and I say, hey, what are you guys doing? Why are you following me? And the boy, he makes it a startling revelation. Again, culture, all the information. Think about all the information that you have received from the time you were born up until now. Everything that has made you who you are. And these boys had information. So much so that the information they had, they were going to use it now relative to me. So those boys made a very interesting decision. They said, we're going to confront this guy. Oh, let me stop for a moment and go back. I just want to make reference to these specific parts of culture. So as you think about who you are, I want to make sure we reference. As we talk about a better understanding, we have to make sure that everyone has culture. Everyone has the component parts of culture. And as you look there, you think about family impacting your life, friends impacting your life, educational impact in your life. Some people are faith has been an important part of them. Sports is a very vital part of their lives. Media, TV, films, and so forth, but also experiences make up a part of a culture. And so these boys in Scottsbluff, I imagine they experience, particularly sports. If you look at the one that says sports, obviously they had been impacted by sports, so much so that they were now confronting me with this specific reality. The boy said to me, "You're Magic Johnson, and we want your autograph." That's right. That's what he said. He said, "You're Magic Johnson." He told me who I was. "You're Magic Johnson, and we want your autograph." Well, I thought, wow, boy, thank you for telling me who you are. I was just so glad that they hadn't mistaken me for JJ on Good Times. I was like, whoa, how did you come up with this one? Magic Johnson. Now, I could possibly show you why they thought this. If you just take a quick little look here from high school, I could see why they might be a little, thinking that I might be Magic Johnson. Come on, look at that. Look at the guy there. He's high in the air. He's got the high socks, the Converse shoes. Number 32. I can see it. And these guys are totally confused by what I'm doing there. That's okay. But these boys had made a very interesting, back to Aristotle now, very interesting Aristotelian syllogism. So what's the syllogism? What's the equation that they put together? Magic Johnson is black. Man in front of us is black. Man must be Magic Johnson. That's right. That's exactly how they came up with it. And so here I am with these boys. Culture has shaped them, has provided them with some information, but that information has also provided them with a perspective. That's what culture does. It gives us a way to see things. And here's a news flash, just in case you didn't know. Nobody can look through your eyes but you. Nobody can see what you see but you. And so, or see it the way you see it but you. But we can begin to think about how other people live and experience the world, again, if we're willing and if we're open and if we're ready to learn. And so these boys had a perspective that the man in front of them was the celebrity, Magic Johnson. And that brings me to the third word. The third word is, again, I got to stop because I want to show you something first. I want to stay with perspective for just a moment. It's interesting how we can be in the same place, see the exact same thing, and see it differently. Again, I've referenced the whole idea of seeing the auto accident earlier and people telling their story about what happened. Well, if you take a look here at this vehicle, and again, I'm going to call it a car because that's what it is. You'll see that as I give you these different perspectives, that it's possible to look at the exact same thing and look at it a little differently. Well, let's journey through it real quick. So just say for a moment that you were a police officer and you saw this car sitting exactly where it is. What would you think about it? What would be one of the things you would think about what you're seeing right now? You might think, well, maybe it's abandoned, or maybe somebody just left it there, but maybe you want to give it a citation. I don't know. But as a police officer, you're thinking, it's a curious thing that this car is where it is, and maybe I need to do something about it. How about if you were a bank robber? So you just came out of the bank and you told your buddy to get you a getaway car, and you came outside and there it was. And so what are you thinking? Well, you're thinking that you're going to be spending the next 20 years in the pokey. That's what you're thinking. Because those tires look kind of splashy there. And I don't know if this thing can get up to 12 miles an hour. So, what kind of, you got friends like that. I mean, my goodness, not good. Then again, I better be careful. It might have a nice big engine in it. And, well, okay, no, go on and do your time. All right. How about this? You're a car restorer. Just imagine for a moment you're a car restorer. You look at this and somebody drops this on the doorstep and you go, hey, I want you to fix this for me. Whoa, a little spackle, a little Rust-Oleum, you might be able to get some good change out of it. This is a nice project for you as a car restorer. How about a single parent? What do you think he or she might be thinking about this video, particularly if they didn't have one? Maybe this is a great help to them. Maybe it's a money trap, one problem after another. So you want to be careful there. How about a prom date? Say somebody drove up to the house in this, ready to take your daughter or your son to the prom. What are you thinking? Well, no more dates. That's what you're thinking. That's the last date that you're going to get out of me with this deal right here. Matter of fact, I'm not getting it. I got to take a tetanus shot before I even get in the thing. I mean, come on. Are you kidding me? No, I'm not doing that. And lastly, how about this? How about a homeless person? Just imagine for a moment a homeless person. Someone says, hey, listen, I see you've been sleeping under the bridge. Here's why don't you take a nice little respite in this deal? The seats go down. And you see this person sees it as a nice way to get out of the inclement weather, possibly a place of shelter, of refuge. Now, what's the truth? What's happening here? What's the lesson? We're all looking at the exact same thing, right? But based on the way your experience, your professional knowledge, you're going to look at it differently. And so, excuse me. So perspective is born out of your own experiences, out of your own background. And sometimes when someone sees something differently, it's just because of the fact that what else would they see based on what they know? The challenge is sometimes we think we know things or we assume things. Like as a bank robber, I'm assuming the car won't go too fast. How do I really know? I don't know. So we want to be careful there. So as we think about perspective, let's go back to the story. So I'm still in Scottsbluff. These boys have gotten information. That information has provided a perspective for them. All right. And that perspective, again, they think I'm Magic Johnson. They told me so. That perspective was a perspective of value. That's right. To honor, esteem, the honor or esteem we place on people, places, whatever it is. Things become valuable to us. And so why would they come up to me and think I'm Magic Johnson? Well, because we value celebrities in our culture. If you can bounce a ball, if you can act in a movie, if you can do those kinds of things, you are, quote unquote, valuable in our culture, in our society, as opposed to people who are law enforcement or teachers or whatever. For some reason, entertainers are more valuable. Magic Johnson is a celebrity. He's a celebrity. He is a basketball player, a Hall of Famer. And these boys, for some reason, and this is again 92. So this is about the time of the Dream Team, the first Olympics where NBA players got to play. So Magic Johnson was on that team. And so it's interesting that I asked the kids, I said, why do you think I'm Magic Johnson? And the boy opened his shirt and he says, he looked just like him. Now he had a point of reference. But we value people in our culture who are celebrities. We have a perspective of value. The question is, why don't we have a perspective of value for everybody else the same way? That's the question. But what happens when you have a perspective of value for people, you do the last thing the boys did. That's right. So let's go back through it. Culture provides us with information. Perspective gives us a way to see the world. Value challenges us to honor and esteem people. It calls us to do that. But when we value people, whether celebrity or not, we want to get close to them. We want to have a relationship with them. And so these three boys in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, full of information from culture, most likely sports, they watch basketball, whatever. They see this person, me. They value me as Magic Johnson, and they come close, a total stranger. The desire to get close to others. And so as we're seeking this better understanding, the question is, what perspective of value do we have? As we think back to the culture that we were raised in, and we think about the culture and the life experiences we've had, do we have a perspective of value? for the people around us, for the people who could be our clientele, for the people in our offices, people in our communities? Do we have a perspective of value? And if we do, oftentimes, I've found over my life that when you value people, you want to be close to them. You want to be around them. You want to not only be exposed to them, you want to engage them and interact with them on a regular basis. That's what these boys did. So they came close. They said, "You're Magic Johnson. We want your autograph." They walked up to me, and they had no problem walking up to a total stranger because of the perspective of value that they had. So I know what you're thinking. John, you didn't sign that autograph for them, did you? You didn't sign Magic Johnson's name for those boys, did you? Well, I'm going to leave you hanging with that one. But what I can say to you is this, is that I grew up in a community that was 99%, 99.9% African-American in St. Louis. It was an all-Black community, all African-American community. The larger world meant nothing to me because everything I needed and everything that was born of the perspective I had was right there. And so we didn't have Latinos in our community, no Native Americans that I knew of, a few Asians, individuals, Chinese people particularly, because they ran the corner fried rice kitchens. And so our business relationship was regular with them. We didn't necessarily care about who they were as people, and they didn't necessarily care about who we were as people. We had an economic relationship. That was the value. That was our interaction. And so with that said, all I knew was that of a young African-American male from St. Louis. And that was my whole world. That's all I cared about. And I didn't care that I didn't know about things outside of my community. That's right. I didn't care. And so the challenge, though, was that the day I would leave that community and venture into more diverse environs, what information would I have? How could what was I exposed to? So I had limited exposure, I had limited information in terms of personal interaction. So how do I engage the world in that regard? Well, let me just share this with you. My mom used to watch soap operas. So I'd come home from school and I'd sit by her side while she was preparing to go to her second job. And guess what? I was getting culturally aware and knowledgeable as I sat by her side, watching Days of Our Lives. That's right, friends, watching Days of Our Lives. And so we didn't have any white people in our community. Well, we did have one family, the Treadways, but for all intents and purposes, they were Black. They were like us. But Days of Our Lives was beginning to help me to get the information I needed to interact one day with those of the lighter hue, if you will. And so that was my sense of the world, Days of Our Lives. Isn't that sad? It's really sad. But you know what? There are people, even today, who use media, who use external sources, not personal interaction, not personal engagement, and so forth, but they use these external sources as their sole source of cultural information. And they use that information and they take it into the world to interact with people. Oftentimes born of stereotype, born of inaccuracies, born of much that is not right. The question is, at what point does that information change? And so as we seek this better understanding, this is not about judgment, it's an observation. It's about an opportunity to be willing, to be open, and to be ready to learn. Because we can all learn something new every day. Okay? So where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? Huh? So what do I do as I'm seeking this better understanding? What's the process? What's the plan? All right. And so one thing I want you to, where we start with self-awareness. That's right. You start with yourself. That philosopher and theologian Michael Jackson says, I'm looking at the man in the mirror and I'm asking him to change it. Well, hold on. He's not a philosopher and theologian? Okay, well, but he did say it. I'm asking him to change his ways. No message could be any clearer. You want to make the world a better place? Take a look at yourself and make that change. That's right. So the process doesn't start with the person next to me. It starts with me. If I'm seeking this better understanding, if I'm seeking this whole idea of diversity in my life and the world around me, I have to look at myself. That's right. And so what do I start? I start with examining my prejudice or prejudgments. That's what prejudices are, prejudgments. You make a decision about something before you have all the information. And so you got to watch your prejudgments. You got to uncover your own stereotypes. And again, think about me. Think about my story from St. Louis. Obviously, I must have had stereotypes about white people from days of our lives, obviously. But I had to recognize them. I had to uncover them before I could overcome them. And I had to acknowledge that they were wrong. And so as we think about this, some of us may have to think about the things that we've thought about people and the wrongness of what we've thought and acknowledge that. I have to consider my own values and beliefs. Now, I know that I'm not going to believe everything everybody believes, and nobody's going to believe everything I believe or value everything I value. Okay? I know that. But as I begin to think about who I am, I begin to at least say that I'm willing to listen to other points of view. I'm open to it. Will it change everything I believe? It shouldn't. It shouldn't. But at least I'm going to respect your opinion and your point of view. And lastly, I'm going to assess my own perspective of value. Do I have one? And I would dare say that early on, I did not. I only valued that which was closest to me, that which was in my comfort zone. That's what I valued. And at some point in time, that needed to change. Okay? And it did. Thank goodness it changed. But it starts first and foremost with me. And so you ask yourself, what things in my profession do I need to become more self-aware about? What do I need to be more self-aware about? What prejudgments have I made or do I make? Am I walking around in stereotypes, with stereotypes? Am I open to a different point of view? Do I have a perspective of value? So these questions are where we begin in this journey of seeking this better understanding. Starts right here, personally. And as we move, and again, the question here is, in what ways and about what must I become more self-aware? In what ways and about what must, not should, but must I become more self-aware as I'm seeking this better understanding? All right? Becoming more knowledgeable, okay, learning together and becoming more knowledgeable about how we experience life. All right? Self-awareness starts there, starts with me. And then as I journey from that point, I'll give you a quick example about self-awareness. You know, oftentimes in our country, particularly, we put things in categories. And that's what makes life more comfortable and more familiar for us. Here's a great example of how we condense a bigger thing into a smaller thing into a bigger thing. Let's say it that way. And so, for instance, this Hispanic umbrella. This is what I call the Hispanic umbrella. And what does it do? It puts down all what I call the Spanish-speaking countries, or many, or most of them. All right. And so this umbrella it makes it so familiar for me. If I could just say, well, I was around some Hispanic people. Well, not so much, because I had to be self-aware. And the same is true for any number of other quote unquote groups. But each of these countries that you see here on the screen are unique in their own right. Even the Spanish is different. The culture is different. Traditions are different. And so we have to be careful not to take away the uniqueness of each of these countries and individuals in these countries by just labeling them as Hispanic. Okay? And we make certain prejudgments about that. We have certain stereotypes about that. We want to be careful as we journey through this, seeking this better understanding. All right? Do I do this if this umbrella had another label at the top and other countries or individuals underneath? Can I say that I take away the uniqueness because I think it's more work for me? Well, listen, if you know anything about anybody from any of these countries, you know what a great individuals they are and what great cultural background they have. Each one unique in its own right. All right. And so we want to be self-aware. We want to be mindful of the desire to go deeper, to dig deeper, to be willing, to be open, and to be ready to learn. There's a lot to learn. So therein lies the rub. Where do we go from after self-awareness and awareness? Well, we go to knowledge. And now we're feeling a little bit more comfortable about where we are. Now we venture beyond ourselves into this place where we can now consider others and learn about others. What do we learn? Well, we learn about cultural norms. We learn about, we may be going to different activities and events to learn about other people. We consider languages, and our language and their language, and that includes sign language as well, in order that we might be able to better communicate. In this time, this day and time, where we have more communication mechanisms than we've ever had since the beginning of the world, it seems for some reason we're less able to effectively communicate. And so therein lies the challenge. How do I communicate across culture, across barriers? Let me give you a quick example. You know, a number of years ago, I left the University of Nebraska to go into community work. And there were young African-American boys in this club, and I thought I could come in and make a difference with them. I'm talking about communication. I'm talking about moving to another culture. Now, they were all African-American. That's right. So I figured, hey, I'm familiar with them. I'm from the hood. I'm a person from a single-parent home. Much of what they were experiencing, I had already experienced. So I'm going to come in. I'm going to make some hay with these guys. Well, they rejected me right away. Yeah. Every time I came in, I was looking professional. I was this, I was that. And I thought I was Mr. Big Shot. And they rejected me at every turn. Well, you say, why would they do that? Well, because I was not speaking their language. That's right. I wasn't speaking their language. I was speaking my language. I figured I was the big shot. I was the one going to come in and make the difference for them. Hey, they were just happy to have me around. You know what? They shot me down. Matter of fact, it was not pretty. And so what I did was I stepped back, I looked at myself, and I realized, what's their language? What's the language that I need to bring to them? Well, guess what? During our time in our evening Tuesday night clubs, we played basketball. As you could tell from my picture, that I played a little basketball back in the day. Wasn't too bad. So I decided I was going to play basketball with them. And I did. And I kicked the butt. That's right. And so they began to realize, hey, this guy isn't so bad. He can play a little basketball. And as I began to play, I began to gain their respect, and ultimately had a voice that could make a difference in their lives. And I've seen many of these boys in highs. I've seen them in lows. I've been a part of their weddings. I've been a part of their funerals. But it's because I was willing to meet them on their terms, be able to communicate with their language. And that began to open a door to our relationship. All right. Also, when you're talking about knowledge of others, it's helpful to know what other people believe. It's helpful to know what they value and what their value system entails. And so as you begin to become more self-aware, now you can go to step 2 and become, now I'm going to learn about others. And so the question here is, in what ways or areas must I become more knowledgeable? And where do I go for this knowledge? So you got to get out of the Barco Lounger, and now we have to get up and go to the places where I can learn the things that I'm not as familiar with. It's not just about asking somebody else. It's about getting up and then going to that place and becoming more knowledgeable, being a part, exposure and interaction, okay, so that I might learn and become more knowledgeable. All right. And so self-awareness, now knowledge, and then that leads us to a final place where now we're beginning to get a certain masteries. We're getting certain skills. And so what I realized with those boys that I was working with, African-American boys in the community, is that I didn't have the skills that I needed to relate, to greet, to meet, to share and relate, because I was doing it only on my terms. And so as I met them on their terms, now I was in a better position to greet them, meet with them, share, relate, because we were now on a certain footing, not equal footing, because I was the adult in the room, if you will, but on a cultural footing, a knowledge footing, a communication footing that allowed us to have relationships. And so the question here of what present skills must I refine and what new skills must I acquire to heighten, okay? Must I acquire to heighten my understanding and sensitivity of others? Let me read it again. What present skills must I refine and what new skills must I acquire to heighten my understanding and sensitivity to others? That's right. So again, all of us can learn, all of us can begin to acquire new and different skills that positions us, and that's the right word, positions us to be successful in this idea of seeking a better understanding in diverse arenas. All right. And so self-awareness, knowledge, skills, that's how we journey toward seeking this better understanding and being a willing participant in the journey. All right. And so as we get toward the latter part here, we want to ask some questions. Now, if we were together, we would be doing this in an actual exercise and group together. But I want you to, if you're writing, if you're taking notes, I want you to consider these two questions. What could we see as some obvious benefits if we actively seek a better understanding in our organization? If the people in your organization began to really be willing and to be open and be ready to learn, to have greater exposure, to have greater interactions, to have this perspective of value that I was talking about, what would be the obvious benefits of that? Huh? Again, we're making promises internally, we're making promises externally as well. So what promises are we able to keep as we are all in this together? We might have a more cohesive work environment. We might have better meetings because we got people on the same page. We may have more respect in the workplace, the higher sense of professionalism. People would be more sensitive to others. We might have better retention in our community because people are now aware that we have people working with us and not necessarily against us just because they have a different perspective. Huh? So you have to create your own list. What are some obvious benefits? What are some obvious advantages if indeed we are journeying this way together? Right? The same is true to the contrary. What are some obvious challenges or disadvantages if we do not seek this better understanding? If we're okay with the status quo, if we take the position of the eternal optimist and say, everything's fine, we don't really need to do anything. Well, I don't know your environment, but I would beg to differ because it's likely that we can all do something. And so what would be the obvious challenges? Again, we might lose people. We might have a community that, again, that's not cohesive, that's not on the same page. There could be any number of challenges that we face. We might lose clients if it doesn't appear that we are sensitive to their needs and we have prejudged them. So we want to be so careful not to do that. All right. And so as we think about this, we want to make sure we move into that realm of being willing to look at the pros and the cons, because if we are doing this together, it has a collective dimension and it has a personal or professional dimension as well. So if we would do this together, we can see some obvious advantages and allow us to get to where we're trying to go. But if we're okay with the status quo, if we're okay, we don't want to do anything to make any changes, then the cons will win out, and then we will lose business, we'll be less profitable, we'll be less productive, and so forth. All these things will affect us, and so we want to be mindful of that. One of the things that we don't like on our computers is spam. Now, again, I don't necessarily like spam, the food, but I didn't put that image up there. But spam, what is spam that comes into your computer? It's unwanted stuff. It's junk. It's stuff that potentially can provide something hazardous, if you will, for your computer. So we don't want it. Well, the same is true in our workplaces. The same is true as we interact every day. We don't want those things that are going to hinder our ability to have the relationships, to have the sensitivity and so forth that we need in a diverse community to be effective, to have meaningful interactions, to be successful at what we're trying to do. No organization wants to fail. No person comes to work to fail. We come to be successful. And so here are some things in this acrostic I call SPAM that we want to be mindful of. And I want to take you through each one so that you are mindful of exactly what I'm talking about. All right. So where do we begin? We begin with the first one, S. The S is stereotypes. Now, we know that stereotypes can be positive, they can be negative, but they are based, they're generalizations based on, most often, inaccurate information. And so the challenge of getting accurate information, again, you remember, I was thinking that all white people were the people like on days of our lives. I mean, that's just the truth. And so I would imagine that I needed some more information. So the stereotypes were many. And so I want to make sure that we are mindful that we do not want to live our lives born out of stereotypes, generalizations. They're all like this, or they're all like that. And we don't want to be a party to those conversations from others. Okay, so we want to be careful about our stereotypes and those harsh, rash generalizations. Now, again, stereotype can be a positive thing as well, but it's still an inaccurate generalization. So I might be able to dance. I might be good at sports, all those kinds of things. All right. So, but that doesn't mean necessarily that's how you find that out, by talking to me, not making a judgment relative to that. And so the judgment is the next word, and that's prejudgment or prejudice. We want to watch that. We want to watch our prejudgments. I referenced it earlier. Again, the thinking that I already know who you are and what you're about and what you're going to do. And so I make an assessment. I make a judgment, a prejudgment. And before I talk to you, before we have a meaningful interaction, I've already made up my mind. Shame on us. Shame on us, if indeed that's the case. And so we don't want to make a prejudgment. We want to be careful about our prejudices. We want to be careful not to prejudge anyone. And we do that in such a wrong way that can cause all kinds of problems. All kinds of problems. And so we want to be careful. And I know there's some people who have a gut instinct. They think they have an intuition, if you will. Be careful. It's a place where you have to really be careful in terms of your prejudgments. Also, friends, there is this sense that we make assumptions. That's right. That's the A. We make assumptions. I come in my suit and tie. Say two African Americans came in. One guy came in in jean and t-shirt. One guy comes in dressed like me. Can we assume which one has the money in their pocket? Can we assume which one is able to pay their bill? Can we make any assumptions at all? Well, not really, because in our culture today, as people dress down and some people dress up, it's no indication of whether one has resources or not, just because of the external appearance. I went to school with two of the richest kids in St. Louis, but you never knew it because they didn't flash it and it didn't look like it. They came to school every day in a paneled station wagon, and they're heirs to one of the biggest fortunes in our nation. And so it didn't look like it, and I couldn't make any assumptions about them because I didn't know. But as I began to get to know them, we played basketball together, and then I realized they're just guys. They're just guys. Now they're rich as all get out, but for all intents and purposes, they're just guys. And so I had to be careful about my own assumptions as well, as we all do. So be careful there. You say, well, John, what's our M relative to watching our spam? Well, it's the whole idea of microaggressions. That's right. These subtle things that sometimes we do, and sometimes we may not even know that we're doing them, that bring people to a point of devaluation. So let me give you an example. You have someone come, you invite someone to come to your office, all right? Two people, particularly male, maybe a man and woman, two women, whatever, two men. And they come in and they're seated. And for some reason, you're spending most of your time, maybe because you're right-handed, talking to the person on your right side as opposed to the person on your left side. Okay? And you're looking at this person, you're only talking to this person. So how should the person over here feel if you're spending all your time talking to the person over here? They're asking themselves, why am I even here? And so that's a microaggression. You have, and you may not mean it. You may not have even tried to do it, but for some reason, you're spending most of your time looking right as opposed to looking left. You have to give attention to both. Say you have a child and they come up and they say, hey, mommy, daddy, look at the picture I just drew. Look, 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 look. And you can't take your eyes off of what you're watching. Now, have you sent a message? Sure you have. You've sent a message. You've sent a message to that child. And that message is saying that what you're saying to me is not important. That's right. And so we want to be careful about the ways we might devalue people unintentionally. And then, of course, some people do it very conscientiously and sometimes very intentionally with these microaggressions, these passive aggressive, if you will. And so we want to be very mindful of the fact that this does not allow us, this does not help us as we're seeking this better understanding, okay? This does not help us as we're looking to learn together, as we're looking to become more knowledgeable about how we share life together, how we gain a heightened sensitivity toward one another. Doesn't help us if we're caught up in spam. And so I want you to be very mindful and very intentional about these things. Again, not to the point where you're always in self-condemnation, okay? But now you're more self-aware and you can become knowledgeable about how to do this, okay? So watch your stereotypes, watch your prejudices, watch your assumptions, and watch your microaggressions, okay? And so as we get to the end here, I want to ask you about how to actualize what I've shared. And before I do that, well, I'll wait to the end. I want to go back to the Scotts Bluff story with the kids. Well, no, I'll finish it now. The boys there at Scotts Bluff, they ask again. They're asking me to give them Magic Johnson's autograph, and I am in a situation where I'm thinking, okay, what do I do? Well, the one kid, I figured I was going to ask them a question, and I did. I said, do you know what it means to judge a book by its cover? That's right. Do you know what it means to judge a book by its cover? And thinking that I'm going to now share with them what it means. But to my surprise, one of the kids said, to say something is what it's not before you really know. What? That's right. He said, to say something is what it's not before you really know. It's about a 10-year-old. So I'm thinking, you know that? And you think I'm Magic Johnson? But that's exactly what people do. They say things are what they're not. And the challenge of going deeper is what we need to do. The challenge of seeking a better understanding is what we need to do. More exposure, more interaction, more willingness, more openness, more readiness to learn. And so as we think about that, and did I sign it? Yes, I did. Okay, I did sign Magic Johnson. Okay. Actually, I signed it Magic J, because that was my nickname in college, Magic J. And so, with that said, if we talked, I said at the outset, we're talking about information for application, but it has to be personal. So based on what you've seen here today, okay, what one thing will you start doing? One thing I'll start doing is, so you think about it. Culture provides us with information, provides us with a perspective. That perspective, if it's a perspective of value, now draws us closer to other individuals. So as you seek, as you become more self-aware, as you become more knowledgeable, as you gain heightened skills, what will you start doing differently now? as it relates to seeking this better understanding. Look at your notes. Look at what you've written down. Look at what you've listened to what you've heard. What will you do differently? What will you start doing? I know one thing that I had to do was I take full advantage of every opportunity now to go to various cultural events, to step outside of the culture that I spent so many years in exclusively, in this narrow, limited exposure that I had. And so given the opportunity to go to a cultural fest or to a museum or to a place where I can learn something different, to see something different, I enjoy that so much more now. But I had to be intentional about that. I had to start doing that. So what one thing will I start doing? The second part of application is this. What one thing will I stop doing? As I think about this, seeking this better understanding, I also have to be mindful of some things maybe that I've done that necessarily have not been great and good along this journey of diversity and understanding. One of the things that comes to mind is in the area of language, the things we say. Again, some of it's only that which we know, but now that we know better, we can do better. Okay, so things we say, or the things we hear other people say and we tolerate. So one of the things I'm going to stop doing is engaging people who are using stereotypes and prejudicial language, not presidential, but presidential, prejudged language around me that shows insensitivity to other people. I'm not going to listen to people's jokes or slights. I don't want anybody to send me anything in the mail that denigrates other people. I don't want any part of it. I don't want any part of it. And so one thing will I stop doing? I'll stop engaging and entertaining foolishness of this nature. So you obviously have your choice about what you're going to do, but that's what strikes me because I don't want to be a party to any of that. So what one thing will you stop doing? Thirdly, the one thing that you'll continue to do. Now, again, some people are already on the move. They already have a sense of diversity in their lives. They've been doing some great things. But so what will you continue to do? Okay, will you continue to be self-aware? Will you continue to seek greater knowledge about in areas that you may not be as versed in or just heightened? Everybody has to continue their training, continue their education process. Will you do that? And will you continue to seek heightened and better skills along the way? So what will you continue to do? And so we need continual champions in this arena. You know, one of my favorite quotes is that some people plant the trees so that others can enjoy the shade. That's right. And so what does that mean? It means that some people are tree planters and some people are shade seekers. So how about you? How about continuing to be a pioneer for the next generation in this regard, so that some of the issues that you're dealing with now, they won't have to deal with the same way? Okay. Do we need freedom fighters? Yes, we do. Do we need people who are champions and advocates? Yes, we do. So keep on keeping on, if you will. And the last bit of information for application in the Leader's Action Plan is this. The one thing that I will encourage others to do is, so what will you encourage others to do? You've heard a lot from me today. So what things can you encourage other people to do along these lines? Watch their language, be more self-aware, engage in more exposure, be more willing to learn, be open to other perspectives, have those diversity considerations in leadership, be mindful of how it affects us in hiring and marketing and in our service to others. What are you going to encourage others to do? All right. So this is where we need people like yourselves to continue to champion these issues and continue to champion the cause of diversity Again, the similarities and differences, and that's the thing I want to make sure we're mindful of before I close. Diversity isn't always about the things that make us different. It's about the things that make us the same in a lot of ways, which we don't talk about a lot. Okay, but not only that, when we're talking about even about differences, we're talking about unique differences. It's the thing that I bring to the table that you don't bring to the table. It's the experience I offer that you don't offer, the perspective I have that you don't have. And that becomes an asset as we journey together. But usually, do we see it that way? That's the challenge. That's the challenge of leaving our comfort zone and now understanding that the diversity around us, it doesn't make us weaker. It makes us better. It makes us better. And so the challenge is to embrace the fullness of what it entails and all that's involved, that we might be able to accomplish the things that we set out to accomplish: our mission, our vision, and our values. And so with that said, I want to close with this. So based on what we've done here today, based on all that you've heard, again, I wanted to share with you these things that would help you to understand that diversity is about more than just the racial dynamic. It involves so many other things and other things that we have to consider. And as you consider those things, I want you to make sure that you are mindful and intentional about seeking this better understanding. It's a part of our lives every single day, every single day. But it goes back to my 3 questions, and I'll conclude with these. Are you willing? Are you open? And are you ready to learn? And if you are, being exposed and interacting with people of different cultures, different perspectives, and different value systems, we'll get to where we're trying to go. And we'll seek, and we'll have this better understanding. Well, I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for the opportunity that I have had to share again with the Bar Association. And I appreciate the opportunity to be with you. Look forward to the opportunity again, and have a great, great day.